Hello and welcome to the Girl Fit Method podcast. I'm your host, Natasha Wakefield, and I am here to help you take charge of your health, get empowered, and ultimately become the best version of yourself. Let's go. Hello and welcome back to the Girl Fit Method podcast. I am so excited. So I have here with me my friend Ash. Ash, we've been friends, we've just figured out for 3 years, and we have never met in the flesh, and I can confirm now she is real. Hello and welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my absolute pleasure.
So exciting to meet you in the flesh.
We've done a podcast before.
We have.
Yeah, and it was actually on body image.
Yes.
It was, and we're actually kind of talking about that today as well.
Very similar.
Yeah, but we're going to focus more so on postpartum. But okay, let's get the listeners sort of get a bit of an idea on who you are and what you do. So give us a summary. What's Ash's elevator pitch? Go, put you on the spot now.
I think of myself as quite dynamic. So I have lots of passions and interests, and I think that they all intertwine. So I'd see myself as a passionate person, an artist, quite a deep thinker, and I apply that to whatever I do, whether it's my professional role or my side hustle or my life as a mum.
Love that. Yeah, you're so clever. Actually, the one thing, I love lots of things about you, but something that really stands out to me is you're very intuitive and you have such a kindness about you as well. Like it just radiates from you. And I'm probably making you blush here, but it's true. You're just amazing.
Thank
you. We've had so many chats. We talk about so much different stuff, and we've actually been through a lot of similar things in our lives as well. We're both single mums, navigating that, business owners. And I thought no better person to talk to about postpartum than you, because we do have different experiences, don't we, postpartum, but similarities as well.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, let's tell us, when did you first become a mum? How old is Autumn?
She is 9. So I was pregnant at 25, and I think May when I was 26, the year, because my birthday's in January. So yeah, 2014 I became a mother.
Wow.
At 26.
So was that planned?
No.
Oh, okay. So how did you feel when you found out you were pregnant?
I was excited just because I had pre-planned that if I was going to have a child, I really wanted them to feel welcome.
Yeah.
Even if I was terrified or the father was terrified. So I think that that foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Set me up, because I just didn't want them to feel rejected.
No, of course not. And when that happens and you decide that's the direction you want to take, you've kind of just got to step up and be like, all right, we're doing this, and kind of go all in. You can't parent with one foot in, one foot out. Well, I guess some people do, but it doesn't work out very well, does it?
I have to say, I didn't expect myself to be a parent, and people that knew me were like, oh, you're not very maternal. And yeah, it's not really how it's been, but.
Let's talk about that for a second, because this morning I was thinking about that specific thing about being maternal, because I can really relate to that. I always wanted to be a mum, and I think a lot of that came down to the fact that you're kind of brought up to assume if you're a female, you're going to become a mum one day. And my mum was a very mummy mum. So she loved babies even before she became a mum, and that's all she wanted to do, where I was not like that at all. But I knew I kind of wanted to be a mum. So I always think was that actually what I wanted, or was it, I love Sunny, I absolutely love being a mum now, or was that just what I thought was expected of me and I just assumed that's what I wanted?
I think potentially, knowing a little bit about your personality, we're very driven people, and maybe societally, we're told that you can't be driven and career focused and entrepreneurial and also be maternal.
Yeah.
But I also have a lot of friends that are maternal, and all they've wanted was children, and then they were extremely disappointed when they had children. So I think it could be maybe more about the labeling, because a good mum is a good mum whether they wanted to be a mum or not, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And your personality shines through as well. It's an interesting thing to think about. Okay, so you've been a mum for quite some time. let's talk about where you were at when you got pregnant. And we really want to focus, I guess, today's conversation on body image, because massive topic for women once they have a child, how they then deal with the changes in their body, even throughout pregnancy as well, and then after. And then we're also going to touch on my experience with postpartum depression, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But I guess, like, where were you at in your life at that point? What were you, 25 or 24?
25.
25, okay. So, like, body image-wise, what were you doing? Like, how were you feeling mentally? Where were you at?
Yeah, I think from the age of 16, like, I always had body image issues and wanted to be thinner. And I look back on photos where I was a size 6 and a size 8, like Australian, and thought that I was overweight. And so really wasn't comprehending that there was like a misinformation there, or like what have you. I modeled, So I would say I had a negative self-image, but when I got pregnant, I think I looked and had a really good friend who was in naturopathy and nutrition, and started to look more about the science of what was happening and health and food. And it kind of shifted my focus onto how I looked to how can I best support this child. So I would say my focus changed a lot when I got pregnant. Being larger was annoying in terms of clothes and how I felt beautiful. But I started to shift a bit more from just aesthetics to functionality.
Okay. And was this, are you saying prior?
Like during my pregnancy.
Oh, during your pregnancy.
Only during my pregnancy.
Okay.
So prior was just negative.
Yeah, okay.
Never was happy no matter how skinny I was. That kind of thing.
Yeah, and I know your experience changed quite a bit once you had your girl.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
Well, I guess just the work I'd put in, not even drinking coffee, even though like that's not, a recommendation. Just wanting to protect her and serve her, and like something bigger than me really influenced my decisions, and it just made me zoom out on the obsession I had with my body. And so it was similar. I just wanted to nurture her. I wasn't in a position to exercise a lot at the start just because of, things that had happened during labour, but it just all kind of got back into place naturally. I think I just naturally have like a pretty decent metabolism. So
So you didn't have to struggle with like being like putting on a lot of weight, feeling really uncomfortable in your body, that kind of thing.
No.
Yeah. Which I guess like would have been helpful for you to feel okay. Because if you think about like if you had gained like 20 kilos, then that's a massive shift, and you would have had to have figured out what your new norm then looks like. So I guess like, and to be honest with you, like in that capacity too, I was very much the same. I was really sick throughout my pregnancy, so I lost quite a lot of weight. In fact, the day that I gave birth to Sunny, I weighed 5 kilos less than what I weigh now. If you think about how underweight I was. But in saying that, postpartum, I gained a lot of weight quite quickly. And I feel like that was because I remember just feeling ravenous because I finally like had an appetite. So I gained weight quite quickly, and I gained close to 10 kilos like very quickly. Still a small person, but I had to kind of navigate that as well. I want to touch on this sense of purpose because in a way I really resonate with your story. So prior I was like, I just hated myself, really struggled. I mean, I was mending my relationship with food and exercise, but there was still this focus on the way that I looked. And the beautiful thing about becoming a mum that completely changed my life is that, like you said, I realised, life isn't actually about me anymore. And people worry about this when they do become a parent, that they're like, I won't be able to do what I want to do. And I'm like, no, it is actually the greatest gift, because we live in our own heads, and that's really where a lot of our negativity and even just like nitpicking on ourselves or setting high expectations of ourselves, all of that just goes to the wayside when you have a child, because you realise, well, I need to be here for this baby because this baby requires me in order to survive. that gives you a massive sense of purpose, but also you just shift your focus, and it's amazing. So in saying that though, I guess that time postpartum is still difficult. It's a massive shift in priorities, not having independence anymore if you're a very independent person, which I know we both were as well. And maybe I'll talk about my experience with that in a moment. I'd love to know, like, it sounds like it was wonderful for you, but were there any particular challenges postpartum that you faced?
Definitely with the independence. And I'm very social. I love going out. I live in Melbourne and there's so much diversity of experiences here. I used to like go partying a lot, like music, bars, food, all of the nightlife. So I felt like I lost that. I felt very isolated and alienated. I noticed that friends were pulling away because our lifestyles just didn't mesh anymore. And as much as I was so focused on being the best mum I could be, I definitely felt like a grief and a frustration. And like, because I was a single parent, I didn't really have anyone that could like babysit, and then I would go out and it was a huge shock.
Were you a single parent from the get-go?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Even during pregnancy.
No way.
Yeah. I just celebrated my 10-year anniversary of being a single parent.
Woohoo. Is it something to celebrate?
No. Well, we're here now, so yes, let's do it.
Wow, so that would have been so difficult, and at such a young age as well.
I definitely felt like I lost my independence, and I'm, like you said, very independent. So I was frustrated. I think I was just kind of like head down, bum up.
Yeah.
I'll be the best mum. If I can't be the best party girl,
then you'll shift that focus into something more productive.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, like we said, the purpose.
Oh, they just give you such a sense of purpose.
Yeah, they're so innocent.
Quick interruption. So if you want to win a $100 Gymshark voucher, I give one away per month to anyone that leaves a rating, review, and subscribes to the podcast. All you need to do is take a screenshot of that rating, review, send it to me on Instagram at GirlFitMethod podcast Instagram page, and you will go into the running. All right, back to the podcast. So I know that for you, and we can touch on this as well around mental health issues, which is stuff that you have had to face as well throughout your life, I would say. And I guess the same was with me, my situation with having Sonny. So I was 27 and I had him at 27, and I couldn't fall pregnant. So I believe a lot of it is to do with the way that I treated my body prior. So I had an eating disorder in my late teens, early 20s. I then spent years over-exercising, under-eating, having no period. And so I went and tried to conceive. We tried to conceive. It's so weird when people say, we were just trying and trying and trying and trying. You're like, ugh, mental image of what that looks like. But well, we were trying to conceive, guys. We're all adults here. I was married. Okay. So, and nothing was happening. Went to the doctors. They did a test that tests your egg levels, and they were like, oh no, you're menopausal.
What?
I know, right? But there's a lot of science now that's come out to say that that's not necessarily accurate, that test that they do. So put that to the side. I had to get help to conceive. So we tried all different types of things. I felt at this point, was so focused on becoming a mum. It became my world. And then we went through IVF, right? And Sonny was just such a miracle. The little embryo that we got, they always grade them, and it was like, oh, it's pretty average, could go either way, wasn't looking good, but it stuck. And, I had Sonny, and the day that I had Sonny, I've never felt elation, and I just felt like I could run a marathon, even though I had just given birth to this child. Like, it was absolutely unreal how I felt. However, about 3 days after that, my whole world started to just crumble. And I guess, if I think about what was happening prior, I was really unhappy prior. And maybe I was thinking having this baby would fix things for me, when in fact it sort of shone a spotlight on how unhappy I was. And yeah, things spiraled pretty bad.
What for you was the difference between the elation and the spiraling? Was there like a conscious perception of the situation, or it was just hormones and emotions?
I feel like I had finally gotten to the point where I had wanted to be a mum, and I thought it was never going to happen. That throughout my pregnancy, I was like, this is not going to happen. I just didn't believe I'd actually give birth to this kid. And when this baby came out, like I did, I felt like it was hormones. I can honestly say I never felt that instant connection with Sonny though. That's something that I struggled with. So I remember looking at him and being like, this is my baby. Like, this is my baby. And this sense of pride. However, that probably lasted 24 hours. And then after that, if I was to be completely honest with you, and it's such a hard thing to kind of vocalize because you can't help but feel immense shame. When you become a mum, you hear about how you fall in love straight away with your child and you have this want to protect them and love them. And I remember looking at him and being like, what have I done? This is not what I wanted. And I was terrified about feeling that way, very shameful of feeling that way. And obviously I felt like a bad person because I was like, this is a helpless baby. This is my baby I've wanted for so long. I don't think I want him. I remember thinking that. I don't want him. And that's so hard to hear now because I'm in such a different place. And at the time, I had no idea I had postpartum depression. And that was a symptom of that, or I guess like that's how it can manifest, is this lack of connection with your child. And I battled that for quite some time on my own. What I want to know is like, so for me, I obviously had people around me. I didn't really necessarily open up to them about that or how I was feeling exactly. With you being so isolated, I know what the first few months of having a baby is like. How did you survive?
I lived with my mum for the first 9 months, so she was really supportive.
Yeah.
And cooked and cleaned and
Yeah.
nurtured Autumn with me as well.
Yeah.
So that was really, really good.
Makes a massive difference. Like you need to have people around you to help you because it is absolutely wild. And the right people. So like I feel with my situation, I think the relationship that you're in prior to having a baby and then the relationship you're in when you have a child as well really can dictate to you, well, can really dictate how you then transition into motherhood. I had no confidence in myself at all. I wasn't in a healthy relationship where I felt supported, and that's not even a dig on the other people around me or the person that I was in the relationship with. It was probably where we were both at, that we couldn't provide that for one another. And then that really reflected on me being able to step into that mothering role. And then, you know, it's like with anything in life, like when you feel like you're not doing what you should be doing, you then start to feel shame and you feel bad about yourself, you internalize that. And then that breeds, it just breeds this reinforcement. I'm not a good mum. I'm a bad person. Like, this is just a helpless child. Like, why am I dreaming about running away? And that's what I used to think about. How can I get away? How can I run away? And that's a really, really horrible thing to think about. I guess for me, we transition over into body image, which is what we also want to talk about. I guess at that point for me, like the shift had been made where I was kind of like, didn't care so much about the way that I looked. It was hard. I guess the focus was off, like I spoke about, but because I was so anxious and so depressed, really, and confused on how I was feeling, my brain was elsewhere, which maybe would have been, it's kind of a good thing when it came to body image. I just wasn't focused on that. But for you, because you had given you this sense of purpose, you were kind of feeling okay. I want to know, like, has that lasted up until today? Or like, when did that kind of wear off?
Yeah, I think it took a while to wear off. I think I was just, elated, and like I said, the functionality was, after spending my whole life thinking my worth was tied to how I looked and never being happy, I would say I haven't really thought about this, but definitely the last few years. She's 9, so maybe the 4.5 second part of her night, like her life. The 4.5 last years, I started to kind of feel like expectation that I should be back to how I
Looked.
better than I would. I have more knowledge now than I had before.
Yeah.
I understand nutrition better, etc. So to have the mental health clash with the kind of knowledge that I know how to take care of myself, and then the wearing down of the day-to-day single parenting, relational kind of, ruptures and all the other things that influence it. I would say that elation only lasted the first few years, and then I started to think I should be like, I've only had one kid, I should be like super toned and hot right now, So I would say 4.5 years, and it would just be tied in with the complexity of mental health and where I think I should be.
It's almost like it was a Band-Aid, really. It just kind of like distracted you for a while, but you hadn't dealt with that deep-seated issue. I tell you, it really, really annoys me. So there was just the pressure that's put on women postpartum. There was this Instagram ad by this fitness influencer who has blown up recently, actually. He's huge. I'm not going to say who he is. Anyway, I saw this Facebook ad that he had, and it infuriated me. And it was a young girl, and I'm 100% sure it was not her baby. I'm talking, this girl was in a bikini. She looked like she was like 16. She was small, like very tiny, and she's holding this probably like 2-month-old. And it was to promote meal plans and weight loss postpartum. And I was so irate. I was like, that is the exact issue that we have. It's just it's like, okay, so women have to grow up, they've got to look really hot in their teens, and then, for them to be of value, they need to then have a baby, but they've got to like spring back into like size 6 and looking better than, being like a hot mum and looking better than how they were prior to having a kid. And it hurt my heart because I thought, do you know how many women, he's targeting pregnant women and he's targeting postpartum women. The majority of postpartum women struggle, right? We're short on time for you, single mum, like so hard. You're just navigating all of these changes and you're already kind of trying to figure out who you are now. And seeing that is just another way of going to know it, like you're not good enough. And it infuriated me, so I screenshotted it. I blurred out his name. Okay, I didn't want to like expose him. I just wanted to say how annoyed I was. And he must have found out. One of my followers must have followed him and he blocked me, so I'm blocked on everything. I can't view his things unless it's on my personal account. But our industry does prey on women because you're in such a vulnerable time at that point. And the truth is like, I talk about seasons all the time. There are different seasons in life where we can lean into exercise and we can try and like set ourselves some goals and like our nutrition can be on point. And there's seasons in life where, do you know what? There's other priorities like keeping a baby alive, just getting sleep, right? Looking after your mental health that are going to come before potentially, getting to the gym 4 days per week. And that's okay. And that doesn't diminish from who you are. However, when that's what you see, these are the visual images that you're seeing, it really messes with your head and you're at such a vulnerable point at that point in your life. It's just another way that society just puts pressure on girls.
I think also as a single parent, it's very difficult to find gyms and classes where you can have a child there.
Yes.
So that's something I've struggled with the whole time.
Yeah.
Even finding Pilates studio near me that allows children in the waiting room. That's just one tiny little element of why I'm like, this is too hard basket.
And you can get overwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
And it becomes too
another
much.
Another thing to organise, another thing to manage, another thing to make sure the child is, not saying that it's not really good and healthy and important, but it's just one more battle to fight.
Yeah.
And the perception, the expectation, the media.
Yeah.
We're similar ages. We've been dealing with it since we were teenagers. So
Psst. I just need to share a quick message with you all. So listen, if you are stuck under eating, over exercising and seeing no changes in your body and you are ready to make that change, head down to the show notes. We have an application form for our one-on-one coaching program that includes our 3-phased coaching method that has helped women across the world find food freedom and improve the look of their body. All right, back to the podcast episode. It's so hard. And I think like what's really important to anyone that is a mum or that's pregnant or that is postpartum or actually has older kids as well is being realistic with your expectations on what you can actually do. So instead of looking at that Facebook ad image of that girl and going, oh my goodness, I need to look like that, well, that's not going to happen. She literally looks like it could be her younger sister. Probably is, you know, like why think that you need to get to that level, even thinking about who you were prior and even the body that you had prior. You've grown a human, you've birthed this human, your body is going to look different. My body looks different. Recently, I have noticed, and I actually haven't noticed it that much, that like my loose skin on my tummy. Right now, I'm not at all here saying that I think I look bad. I don't. I know that like by society, I kind of like have a body that's quite acceptable by society. So I just want to preface that. However, like my body does look different to what it did prior, and I can't put expectations on myself for me to look like who I was. That's a different life. Like my life has changed now. And so how do we manage those expectations? Like for you, Ash, being a single mum and not being able to find gym classes that have a creche that can look after your baby. Okay, does that mean that you can pop them in the pram and go for a walk 3 days a week? Perfect, beautiful. That are things that you can control, that are going to be good for you, but you're not putting these crazy expectations on yourself that you can't reach, right? And the same goes with nutrition. I feel like being a mum, it can be much more difficult. You've got like kid snacks around, but also you're just like low on time, you know? And that's going to take maybe preparing ahead of time or just once again, like managing expectations rather than self-sabotaging, because I'm just thinking about you, Ash, like, and I can hear it because we've had these conversations before and you beat yourself up over it because you don't do what you think you should be doing. That never motivates anyone to actually take action to start doing what they're doing, you know? But we all do it. Like we all do it. And I do it in different aspects of my life as well. I guess the question is how do we become okay with lowering those expectations and looking at what our life looks like now and shifting those and accepting ourselves for who we are? I know that we're both on that journey. Haven't arrived yet, but I'd love to know like what's kind of helped you over the past, Autumn's 9, over the past 9 years in that way.
I think just valuing different things. When she was younger, she didn't have as much relational capacity and she was learning about food, you know, it was all the colours and everything. And then as she's older now and she has more preferences and she's more vocal, I think for me, relationships more important, like as in I still care about her nutrition and I definitely feel guilty about it all the time. But I try and model that to her and I know that she follows me so much more than the things that I say.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So as long as I'm modeling like, and we talk about nutrition and colours and, you know, vitamins and everything, she understands how things work. I think long term she's set up and that's how I have managed that because, yeah, all she wants to eat is McDonald's. But she's also obsessed with sport and it's just like really strange to kind of navigate. But for me, modeling nutrition and health is, I think, my biggest investment in her understanding of self-image and her future.
And also, I guess then that puts that because you've got that responsibility, then that means you need to step up as well. And I think that's the good thing. Like we can have these issues with body image or we can have issues with exercise, nutrition, but we also have to be aware of, you're exactly right. You can talk and say whatever you want, but kids watch and you want to be, they're going to do what they see you do, which in a way is terrifying because we're all still flawed and your flaws don't go away when you become a parent. But it's this motivation then to better yourself because once again, you're responsible for this other person and whatever you do, whether we like it or not, and we stuff up on a daily basis, I mean, I do, like you make an impact on your child. And so I guess like, and I can even think about that in my life, that was probably the changing, that was the thing that changed it for me. Was when I had Sonny, I realized, okay, what kind of person do I want to be? Prior to having him, I was super selfish, even in that capacity, like thinking about myself all the time, feeling like I needed to weigh a certain amount or eat a certain way. It was all about me. Where when I had him, I was like, well, I don't want to be a selfish person, because if I continue to lead that lifestyle, I'm not going to be a good mum and I'm not going to be present for him. And so for me, I had to learn to chill out, lower my expectations, but then also try to model to him balance. Life is about going out and eating an ice cream with your child, rather than it just being, no, you can't eat that, that's a bad food. Well, what message are we then sending that child as well? So it kind of gives you the ability to step out of your own head and gives you that motivation to better yourself, to then be able to better your child. Does that make sense?
That's how I felt when I had just had her.
Yeah.
And even in pregnancy, I was like, I'm going to do the best. I was being a total perfectionist, but I was like, I'm going to be the healthiest I've ever been, et cetera, et cetera. And it did wear off over time. But I agree that it is a long-term goal as a parent.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to transition over back into mental health now. So I've sort of spoken about my postpartum depression. That probably took me like 12 months to get over, and I ended up going and seeing a psychologist, and she diagnosed me with it, and I was like, really? Like, that's postpartum depression? She's like, yes. Like, it's very, for women to experience a lack of connection with their child is, pretty much in line with postpartum depression and anxiety. And that, for me, the connection with Sonny grew over time. It's so funny talking about this, because if I had talked about this 6 months ago, I would be crying and sobbing, because it was such a sense of shame for me. I mean, it is, right? Like, I was brought up in I was told by the people around me that I should feel a certain way when I had Sonny, and I didn't feel that way. And so looking back now, and if I was to ever become a parent again, I wouldn't go into it with those expectations. And I think that kind of fed the way that I felt, right? So those around me going, you'll just love it. You'll love it. I hated it. I hated the first 3 months. The first 6 months, hated it. For me, right? I found it a struggle. And I want to say that because a lot of girls have a child and they don't enjoy it. Doesn't mean they've got postpartum depression, but they can just not enjoy the fact that their independence is taken from them. They have this child that's like attached to them constantly, and you feel suffocated at times. And as the kid gets older, they have more independence, you gain more independence, and you can feel like, okay, we're getting into a bit of a groove here. For others, they absolutely love that. They love that feeling of being needed. And I've got friends that are like that as well. And as their children grow up and become more independent, they struggle with that, because now they don't need them as much. And you see that end of the spectrum as well. 9 years is a lot. A child grows and develops and changes so much. How have you been able to manage, or what, I guess, challenges have you faced as a mum with your mental health?
It's been really challenging. It's hard to say whether or not it's been better because of being a mum, and then it's been potentially more challenged because of that. It's really hard to say at this point. But I'd say the isolation, the loneliness, they exacerbate existing beliefs. Feeling like I'm quite a hopeful, kind of romantic person, and I've had relationships in the last 9 years, but kind of just this sense that family is two people at least parenting a child.
Yeah.
And never having that is like a massive disappointment. Yeah. I think that feeds into mental health issues for me.
Yeah.
Or kind of just holding out or having hope and then being disappointed, and the roller coaster of that, and then wanting Autumn to experience that family vibe for me. So I'd say that it, for me, has impacted it heavily. I'd like to think that with a little bit more flexibility of my schedule and financial sharing of the load, etc., I'd like to think that it would be easier.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
I think the breakdown of the family unit, which is a whole nother podcast episode, is hard. It is so hard. Raising a child, parenting on your own, I should say, is incredibly difficult.
Something I found really interesting is that Autumn never knew us together because we weren't. So I had thought that would give her some strength in the situation, and yet when she was like 2 and 3, she would say, I just wish my mummy and daddy lived together. So you kind of don't think that a 2 or a 3-year-old is that cognitive, but that desire was there for her. And I think similarly, like, that desire is there for me to have like that partnership, and not just for experience sake or ease, but just because it's kind of feels a bit like how it
should be. Yeah.
At
Without
least 2
saying
against
that.
1. At least.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. And it's dealing with that is heartbreaking as a mum as well. Sonny said to me the other day, he goes, we did something, I think we went to like bounce or something, and he goes, we just made a really great memory, because I'm a newly single mum, and I'm trying to build a life and a home for him that he's not used to, right? So his home is where he's always been, and now I'm trying to create this new home for him and create memories for us together. And I said, we've just made a really awesome memory. I said, did you have fun? And he said, yeah, I had fun. We made a good memory, but my favourite memories is when mummy and daddy lived together and we all loved each other. Kill me.
It's just a core thing.
Oh, it just breaks your soul. It absolutely breaks your soul. But I remind myself that 2 happy homes is better than 1 unhappy home, and a child doesn't sometimes know context and doesn't understand the whole picture, and they will at some point, and all you can do is show up for them day in, day out now in the best capacity that you can, and love the heck out of them and pray to God that they don't end up completely damaged from the way that you've parented.
I would have to say that is probably the mandate that we connect on the most.
Yeah.
And that is why I chose to be a single parent.
Yeah. And it's a very... Actually, guys, if you're listening to this and you want us to talk more about being a single mum, because that's a really different topic and a deep one. And I know there's so many single mums out there. Or, I get DMs now even from girls saying, I want to leave my partner, I want to leave my husband, I don't know how to do it. And it is terrifying. It's so huge. Then we can definitely maybe record another podcast episode on it. But yeah, I think like all of these situations that you come up across as a mum, you have a sense of feeling guilty, responsibility, internalizing that it's not being good enough in any capacity. But we have to just be kinder to ourselves. Like, we're human. Just because you become a parent doesn't mean that you magically become this person that doesn't make mistakes, doesn't make the wrong decisions. But I think as well as if you can face your child and acknowledge the fact that, hey, like maybe I was wrong here, and owning up to that, rather than pretending it didn't happen and pretending everything you do is right and correct, which, it isn't. We all make mistakes. Then we can be really open and transparent with our child to say, hey, I love you, but I'm still human and I still make mistakes as well. Yeah, it's a wild ride. I mean, parenthood is crazy, and the crazy thing about being a mum is that everyone's experience is completely different. But I think deep down we just all struggle, right? Like, we all still, it doesn't take away the issues that we face or the self-confidence issues that we have. It can sometimes highlight them, but also it gives you this beautiful ability to see that your life is so much more than you, which I think is wonderful. And, a shout out to all the girls out there as well that don't want to become mums. That's another thing. Not everyone wants to be a mum, and that's completely fine. So thank you so much for jumping on, Ash. It was so great chatting with you. If people want to find out where you are an incredible artist, where can they find you?
My Instagram handle is ashwhite.co, and my website is the same.
Wonderful. All right.
Thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure. Until next time, guys, big love, Coach Tash.